Okay, welcome back to another author interview at Crystal Lake. And today our guest is actor and author Claudia Christian, who co-authored The Mother Tree with Chris McAuley, who unfortunately cannot be with us today because he's not feeling well. But I'm going to turn it over to her now and let her introduce herself. So take it away.
Hi there, I'm Claudia Christian, and I'm happy to be on this show.
Okay, so give us a little overview of what the book is about.
So the book, first of all, started, the inception of it was I had COVID a couple of years ago, and I was in Rome with my partner, and we were both had a very high fever, and we were kind of having these funny, not hallucinations, but very wild dreams. And I started telling him about this dream I had about all of these animals. And as I was telling him, I started doing these voices, and I created these little characters for all of these animals. And then he, who's a composer, said, "Oh my gosh, this is an orchestral piece." During this entire time in Rome, as we battled COVID, we came up with this musical idea for these animals that would be defending the climate change within their forest, and also trying to save this beautiful tree, Mother Tree, where they all lived. And for me, the impetus behind it was, believe it or not, it started with a little kernel in that dream of the memory of my own raccoon that I had as a kid. So Rocky Raccoon was actually my pet. It was a baby raccoon that my brother had brought home to once again save. It was a motherless raccoon that was abandoned, a little puny little guy. And we raised that raccoon, and she lived very happily with us and our poodle for many years. It was very cute. I swam with her and played with her, and she loved tuna fish, and she was just a delightful pet. And so all of those magical, mystical memories came up in this COVID inspired dream, and that's how Mother Tree was born.
Yeah. Raccoons are interesting creatures. We had some wild ones that used to come to our bird feeder when I was growing up, and so I used to watch them, and they're so clever.
They are clever, and they have the most beautiful hands. That their
Yeah.
palms are so soft. The skin on their hands is just extraordinary. I just loved her so much. She used to be up on my shoulder when I'd be in the pool. It's really sweet.
Yeah. So obviously the inspiration for the book came out of the dream, but were there any other inspirations that you incorporated into it?
Yes, actually, with the very first time I went to Paris, a friend of mine in Los Angeles said, "Oh, you must meet this guy Raoul, and he lives in Paris, and he'll show you around." And mind you, I was very young. I was a teenager, and I was lucky enough to go to Paris. And this Raoul fellow I met was the most cynical individual in the world. And you could say, "Raoul, what a beautiful day for sightseeing." And he would say, "Yes, but Claudia, later on we could have a flood and die." So I mean, everything was so negative. This man was like a glass half empty kind of person. You could say, "Oh, that painting in the Louvre is so beautiful." He goes, "Yes, but it will be stolen probably within my lifetime." Everything was negative. And so that's how Lulu was born. And I thought Lulu has to have a French accent. And she's, granted, Lulu has reasons to be feeling dejected and negative because she's been abandoned. But Lulu immediately, in my mind, sounded like Raoul. So that was my inspiration for this rather cynical little French cat, Lulu.
Oh, that's adorable. But it's also an excellent segue to the next question. Tell us a little bit about some of the characters in the book. What are they like?
Lulu, I find to be, she's very tough, and her cynicism comes across as a defense mechanism, which it is. She was abandoned, and she has a very limited ability to trust at this point. And so when the other animals are friendly to her and invite her into their life and into their home, she's scared, she's wary. Rocky is really a survivorist. He's one of those people who live up in the mountains. "I'm going to get you. we will store our food here. He's one of these people that have everything, the bunker full of canned goods and all that. He's also later on in subsequent books, he's kind of a conspiracy theorist. He believes in woo-woo things, and Rocky is a really interesting character. I love Rocky because I love doing Rocky's voice. Madeline, to me, is Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music. I mean, she is, or Mary Poppins. She is the voice of dignity and reasoning, and I always heard her with a British accent, sort of the nanny that you always wanted, someone to put a Band-Aid on your knee and make you feel better. And because she's high up in the tree and she flies, she's the one that is our omniscient point of view. She can see everything and get the lay of the land and report back. So I really wanted to have a bird. Well, she came naturally to me during that whole dream thing, because she was the one that was spotting the troubles, spotting, the things that would go on in the forest. And then, of course, we have Walter the turtle, the tortoise. Walter was always the oldest, most wise little Buddha, the one with very short phrases. It's okay. And Walter is actually his voice is based on a friend of ours that that speaks like that. He speaks like this. And his voice immediately came to me for Walter. Very slow, very sort of low, very unique. And Walter has the ground perspective, and he slows people down to think because he can't move very fast. So if you ever watch a tortoise, they have a better idea of their immediate surroundings because they can't move very quickly. So he can't really keep up with everybody, but he has that real innate sense of what is right and what is wrong. And so he's our guide, our moral compass. Walter is our little Buddha, the one who just puts everything in perspective for us. So those are our characters. And when we were writing the book, Chris, who's Irish, added Finn. And Finn originally was not in the Beatles. I had 4 characters in my mind. And now we have a 5th Beatle, as we call it, and that is Finn. And Finn, I immediately thought, well, Finn has to be Irish. He's got to have a little Irish voice, just as an ode to Chris, and also because he has that lyrical, youthful exuberance. Finn, I see, as a bouncy ball. He's just bouncing all over the place. He's so excited to have friends. He's so excited to be part of the gang, and he really wants to prove his worth. And he's just pure joy and youthful enthusiasm.
Yeah, that youthful exuberance.
Exactly.
So when you were creating these animal characters, of course, you want to give them a bit of a human quality so they're relatable to the kids. But how did you keep some of the animal characteristics as well? How'd you balance that?
How did I keep what?
The animal characteristics of the characters as well as
Yes.
giving them human characteristics. How'd you balance it?
Well, I mean, I think you can see that there's cliches amongst animals. Raccoons are known as scavengers. Cats are known as sort of disinterested or playing hard to get, or they don't care. Those are cliches that I didn't want, to have as a traditional stamp, the wise old turtle but there are elements of these qualities in the animals that are true. I mean, I can't have a tortoise zipping around the forest. Somebody's going to have to assist him, or he's going to have to fall behind, or he's going to have to carry things on his back. So there are characteristics that make sense. Rocky is more agile with his hands. He's more able to dig, to do things that the other animals can't. Finn is faster than anybody, has a great sense of smell. So maybe he's, going to help with the food foraging. Madeline, of course, has the benefit of wings. So, she is our eyes. She's the eyes of the forest. Once again, all of these animals, you have to be semi-realistic in the fact of their size and their ability to navigate and how far they go in a day. So, a cat will roam, but usually within a certain amount of space. They have their little little environment that they like and that they mark their territory. So you have to think, okay, she left her territory out of desperation, much like people move out after a fire or a natural disaster. They're suddenly no longer in their neighborhood. So in that regard, she's out of her comfort zone as a cat. She's no longer in her own territory. She's in their territory. So there's all these elements of animal qualities that you have to mix in with the human qualities of the feelings that people will identify with, that children will identify with when they read the book. The feelings that we all experience, feelings like fear or confusion or loss or trauma or joy, happiness, family, friendship, the positive and the uncomfortable.
So, why did you want to explore the ecology theme in the book? What do you want to impart to young readers?
I wanted to impart the fact that everybody can act locally. Everyone can do a small bit. And if everybody does a small bit, it results in a large result. That's really the key, is when something is so overwhelming, like the climate, the issues that we're facing now, that we no longer have normal seasons, we no longer have normal temperatures, we no longer can expect when to get rain or when not to get rain, that there are, very realistically, people, look at what happened in South Africa. I mean, an entire city went without water, just a few years ago, ran out of water. I mean, there are droughts everywhere, and children are picking up on this. They certainly know about it. So if they know that they could do small things, if they could organize something with their school to clean up an area of a beach or to clean up an area of a forest, or if they naturally know that when they see litter, get rid of it, to not buy plastics as much, to not ask for toys that are made of plastic all the time and new stuff, to learn how to live with their older toys and enjoy them and maybe change them, make different clothes for them or adapt them, but to not constantly want to consume more and more and more, because the more we consume, the larger the landfills. Recycle. I always say, pass your book to a friend when you finish reading your book. I always recycle my books, and we have a little local libraries in my neighborhood. We have 2 big boxes that hang on a post, and they're free libraries for the neighbors. So I go and get new books and leave my old books, and everybody does the same. So the kids could start a free library in their neighborhood where they recycle books. And they get to read what other people like. They could recycle toys. They could do a toy exchange at school or a device exchange at school. They should recycle their old devices. There's so many different ways to act in little ways and act locally, which will then eventually ripple out to affect the larger whole. What the important theme of this book is that you are not helpless, that you are powerful, and that you have the ability to make these small incremental changes that will help your planet. This is your planet. It belongs to all of us. And the younger generation is the one that's going to have to stay much longer than you or me, and this is their home. And they should want to protect it. They should be inspired to protect it. And it's not something that should feel, glum or gloomy. It can be fun. It can be a way to meet other people. You could meet in a park and help clean the park. You could, gather up a group of friends, like-minded people, and spend the day together, having real life experiences with real humans and not living on a device. So that's another step toward a more normal and more enriching life.
Yeah, definitely. And it's an excellent message. So, you also have a theme of found family in the book. So, was this an important aspect for you to explore? And why did you explore it?
Absolutely. The ideal of the perfect nuclear family is something that has shifted dramatically. We've seen changes, even in the past 100 years, that are so profound. When women started going to work, when people started needing 2 incomes, when people of the same sex were marrying, the family dynamic has changed. A lot of people opting to adopt children. So in that, and also, the fact that that people may be born into a family that they always feel like an outsider, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can choose your family eventually when you're an adult. You can love the family you have and that you're born into, but it doesn't mean that that is stagnant. Your family can grow and shift and change. And I mean, I have soul sisters that I consider siblings that I've known for 30, 40 years. I have people who have been mentors to me that I call my, second father, or third father. I had a godfather that taught me about classical music, that wasn't related to me, but he was part of the family. We called him Uncle Jer. you know. So all of these people that were in my life, for instance, contributed to a much larger family than what I was born into. And I think also when you have profound change in your family, I come from a family where my parents got divorced and my oldest brother was killed. So there were profound changes that were dramatic and traumatic. So I think throughout my life, I was always looking for other people to join my family, my tribe. And I think that that's healthy because these are the people that can serve in other ways other than your mother and father or traditional mother and mother or father or siblings. And I think that idea of Lulu having had a human family and now having an animal family that is still just as much a family as her old family was. In fact, it's just different. It's a different kind of family. So I wanted to show that that's normal. The shifting of going from one ideal to another is not something that's bad or scary. It can be very positive and enlightening. I know people, when they go away to college, they have these intense relationships with fellow students. So you could have school chums that stay with you through your entire life. Some kids, I mean, I remember my very first friend I made when I was 3 years old. And we remained friends through these pivotal years. Even when I moved away from her, we wrote letters to each other from 3 to about 10, which is, for a child, is pretty amazing, especially when you're not living in the same neighborhood or the same state. So all of these people become members of your family, whether it's temporary or forever. I think it's very healthy.
Yeah, that's very definitely true. I still have a friend that I met in high school. So, I mean, some people stay with you, some people just kind of go in and out of your life. So, yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
So, do you have a favorite scene in the book?
I love the firefly, the firefly scene, just because visually I could see it, and our artist depicted it so beautifully. But I saw in my mind's eye the revelation and the pure joy of seeing these little creatures light up that the animals, maybe a few of them had never seen them before, like Lulu, must have just been so insanely excited, like I was the very first time I saw fireflies. And my brother and I tried to get them into a jar. And I remember the very first time I experienced fireflies when I was a kid. It was mind blowing. We were on the island of Galveston in Texas, and there was this excitement in the air, and everyone shouted fireflies, and we looked up, and there was this beautiful cloud of these glowing creatures. And I was gobsmacked. I mean, I was just a child. I had never seen anything like that in nature before. I had seen jellyfish and some pretty exciting things, but not creatures that lit up in the sky. That was exciting. So I wanted to carry that new excitement into a few of the animals who had never experienced that before.
That's cool. So, what are some of the challenges for you, especially as an actor going into writing, about writing middle grade books? Did you have any problems when you were writing this one?
No, I mean, Chris and I have been working together on comic books and various other things, and I had written basically a synopsis and a storyline for the orchestral piece that we plan on doing, the musical piece called Mother Tree. So it was pretty easy to formulate, the back and forth and to just create together because we've done it so many times before. When I've written other genres, it's interesting because, for instance, when I wrote my memoir, I just recorded it on Zoom sessions. It was just total, which is why it flows like natural speech. And then in other books, when it's had to have a lot more structure, that's a completely different animal. So every single format is different. I think this one is is nice because it's bite-sized pieces. So each story can be told alone, can be read alone. You don't have to read the whole book all in one shot. So it would be nice for instance, for an older person to read it to a younger person in little bite-sized pieces, one little story a night before bed or something like that. So that structure is completely different than writing a, 3-inch novel on a Rome that never fell, an alternate history book like Wolf's Empire that I did 10 years ago, which took 10 years to write. So as an actor, what benefits me is dialogue. That comes very naturally to me because I read so many scripts. I've been acting since I was a teenager. So I have read a myriad of scripts, and I've performed in so many television and film productions that for me, dialogue is very natural. So usually in a book, I definitely, that's my strong point, is writing dialogue.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I
And
mean, it's yeah, and also I say it out loud, and if it doesn't sound natural when I write scripts or anything, it's, I'm performing every single role as I'm going along. So that's why you get the ellipses and the little contractions and this and that, because that's how people speak. But a lot of scripts, when you read them, they're very clumsy to read out loud because the person is not an actor. They're not used to writing in the form of natural speech.
yeah, I find reading something out loud when you're proofing your dialogue is very helpful.
It's very helpful because you can see where it's where it clunks, where it's
Mm,
awkward. It's not normal in the English language, for instance, or it just sounds awkward, or and then you can rewrite it. So it's an excellent tool for any writer to read everything
mm.
out loud and
Yeah,
see the
definitely.
balance and the also the beats in it. There's a lyricism to it. It doesn't have to be Shakespearean, to that specific beat, but there has to be some beauty to the flow of it.
Mm.
Particularly if you're asking people to read it out loud to children.
Yeah,
You want this to be a positive, fun experience for the adult or the sibling or whoever else is reading the book out loud.
yeah. So, how was your writing collaboration with Chris? I mean, I'm always fascinated to know how these things work, having never collaborated with anyone, because I'm always afraid I'm going to just try and be totally in control if I do that. But so how did that work?
It differs every single time. I mean, there are some times that you have a phone call or a Zoom session and you plot through the first thing, and then one of you says, "Well, let me take a pass at that chapter," or "Let me take a pass at that story," or "Let me do this." And there's other times that one person is so busy that the other person just writes the whole chapter, and then you edit it and you put your voice in it. So it really depends. And I've worked with other. It's interesting. I've collaborated with Morgan Grant Buchanan on a few things, and we tried, it's so funny you say that. We tried the sort of, here, you write the first paragraph or the first chapter, and then I'll write the second chapter for Wolf's Empire, and that lasted probably about a month. And then it just didn't work. It was very difficult. It was easy for me to go off of his chapter, but you have to realize then you're writing the next chapter and you're dictating where he's going to go in chapter 3, but maybe that's not where he wanted to go. So you're parking the car into a spot that maybe the person doesn't like. So it does end up, you're right in that there are complications. It definitely ends up where one person usually takes the lead. One person comes up with the creative gist of it or the characters and does the dialogue. One person does a full rewrite on the other person's work. But it's easier if you plot it all out, you agree with what's going to happen, you get the characters extremely specific, and you have a basic Bible And that's what we create, the Bible of like, these are the animals, these are their missions, this should be their arc in their storyline, this is their revelation, this is their emotional tone, this is what they sound like as well. And then you have the basis where you can go from anywhere. So either one of you could write a story if you really know the animals back and forth and what the mission of the story is.
Yeah, that is half the job of knowing the characters and what they're going to do.
Yeah,
And then hope they don't change their minds halfway through the book.
exactly. Exactly. Maybe they have minds of their own.
Yeah, my characters usually do. So
Exactly. And then they tell you what they want you to do, which is so interesting. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, they usually tell me, "Oh no, I've decided to be a villain now." So it's like,
Do you ever look back at your work and like if you pick it up a week later and you say you don't even remember writing that? That's when I think it's really organic.
yeah, sometimes, mostly it's just like when I'm going over it and I find these sentences and these weird typos. It's like, what was I thinking when I
Oh
wrote
no.
that? It's like, I don't even remember writing that particular thing. It's like it's weird sometimes, yeah, but and if I come back to it, like if I put it away for a while, I come back to it, I'll have to reorient myself with what I've written too. So yeah, it
I think
happens.
when yeah, you're in that flow,
Mm,
it's the spirit is working through you and sometimes you come back to it and say, what some character, some random character will suddenly show up in a script of mine. I'm like, why does this person want to come out? And then they become like the lead of the next episode. It's so funny. It's like they're just clawing to be born. It's
yeah,
interesting. It's a beautiful process. I think all kids should learn to write short stories when they're little because it is such a wonderful discipline and it's such a wonderful use of our creativity and imagination. I would encourage all children not just to read but to also write down what's in their head. And don't rely on something else to entertain you. Don't rely on a device to think for you or a TikTok video to think for you or to create for you. You create your own little magical creatures and stories. That's really where the juice is. That's where the power is. And that's what I believe that writing does to us. It sets us free.
yeah, definitely. So, do you have a favorite childhood book that stayed with you?
James and the Giant Peach and Charlotte's Web, and I loved. Uh, I really loved the Little House on the Prairie books when I was a kid. I loved them. I really loved those books. I loved Roald Dahl when I was a
Mm,
child. I read a few Judy Blume books, of course, because I was a little girl struggling through puberty. Um, but I mostly remember things that had that element, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, just those element of mystical, magical, great imagination. I remember James and the Giant Peach. I remember seeing, as I was reading it, seeing it like it was a movie in my head. And that those very visual scenes of the giant peach and all of that made a very strong impact on me.
So, who are some of your personal inspirations or favorite authors?
Well, I read a lot of history, and I really love 10th to 17th century European history in particular. So the Sharon K. Penmans for
Mm,
historical fiction.
I love his
Um,
stuff.
Rutherford is another one. The fellow who wrote Last Kingdom. Why am I? Oh God, I'm spacing on his name. He's written so many great historical series. Uh, books, really well researched historical fiction is my bag. That's what I really love. C.J. Sampson wrote a great series of mysteries that took place during the Elizabethan time that were They're called the Matthew Shardlake Mystery Series. They're fantastic, really beautifully researched. That's really what I am enjoying and have enjoyed. But I've been reading a lot. I just read Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead. That was another phenomenal book. She's an incredible writer. I've read everything of hers. So yeah, I read a lot of different stuff. I have about 10 books going right now. If you look behind me, you, you would see on my coffee table, there's there's my book.
Yeah,
I
that
have
looks like my coffee table too.
yeah, it's just covered in books. And my little library over here, as you can see the books. So yeah, there's a library upstairs, a library there, a library out there. And they have these great coffee tables that have library shelves underneath them. So I've got books in every room. I read a lot. I've been reading a lot since I was a child. It was funny. I was talking to somebody last night, and they said, "Do you remember those competitions we used to have in the summers?" And I said, "Oh gosh, yes. In Connecticut, we used to have these competitions at school where it was how many books you could read over the summer." And the kids were very competitive over it. It was such a wonderful thing to do. I
Mm.
loved it.
Yeah, I don't read as much as I used to because I'm too busy, but
You're busy
but
writing, yeah.
yeah, but I do still love to read, and all my TBR keeps getting bigger because all my author friends keep putting out books. So
Yeah. Well, that's the joy of freebies.
yeah. Okay, so what's your next project? Can you give us a little hint at what's coming up for you?
Well, I've been working on this dark comedy series that I've been writing, and the next physical project that I'm doing is I'm playing a live production of a oratorio about Saint Francis. I'm the narrator angel, so those are going to be live performances next year, and we just started rehearsals for that. I am, like I said, I'm writing this series that I'm enjoying immensely, and I've been writing short stories a lot and doing some readings on my Instagram page of little prose and stories just for people to enjoy on Sundays. So I started doing that. Um, I actually attended a fun little short story writing class in France this year that was really nice. And that was a lot of fun, and it got me back into that format of short story. So I've been working on some of those.
Yeah, short stories a favorite of mine to write too. So yeah,
They're really fun to write.
yeah, they are. So I think we'll wrap the interview up here. It was a pleasure chatting with you, and thank you for being a
It
guest.
was a pleasure chatting with you, and it's lovely to meet you, and thank you for doing this.
Okay, and that's it for this episode. And bye for now, everybody.